Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing marvelously well. You're watching the Break It Down show, and I am Warren Huart.
I hope you're doing marvelously well. I have heard you say that so many times, and for anybody who has not watched your YouTube show, the Produce Like a Pro, you talk about all of the amazing songs and artists that have changed everything, and you have such a succinct way of putting not just a breakdown of the technical things that that influenced music after it, but also just sort of the cultural seat and why everything shifted and musical tastes changed. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it. That stuff's super important to me because we can get lost in one component of the music, and it's the whole picture. Like we talked about Heroes by Bowie. He's living in Berlin. He went there specifically because of the energy. It's in the middle of Eastern Europe, East Germany, and it's a city where half of the city is, still technically in the West, and yet, and the energy that was there, and
it came from the tension.
Yeah. And more importantly, or just as importantly, I should say, I love being able to talk about things that we've maybe forgotten or not even realized that, say British New Wave, for instance, had a lot to do with two big forces. And that was the German synth pop, what people like to call, krautrock, which was like Neu! And Tangerine Dream and Kraftwerk and bands like that. Connie Planks, as a producer and engineer, how important he was, mixed with like American R&B and disco. Because you listen to like Joy Division and New Order, you hear this boom, you hear these disco rhythms, but then you hear like, this German kind of angular music, mixing it all together, and you get Depeche Mode, you get Joy Division, you get New Order, etc.
Yeah.
So I love being able to because to me, I could talk about what mic they used, and we do when we can find that, and people remember, and so that could lean into production. But I love the whole thing about it, and I think so many of us are drawn to music from the songs themselves, but also, you come in because maybe that message means something to you. There's so much more to music than just one piece. It's a massive story.
Terrific. The story is the thing. So I play in a British rock band called Commonwealth. Our singer,
the Commonwealth,
Uncommonwealth.
Oh, Uncommonwealth, yeah. Even better.
We play all of the British invasions.
Yeah.
So the nice thing was, I discovered Produce Like a Pro in my YouTube watching right around the same time that the band started to come together. And our singer guitar player, his name is Andy, and he's from London. And so when we started playing, we just, we were so in love with British music that we said, hey, let's just make that our shtick. And it's kept us busy. It's been wonderful. But to have a place to refer to all of these songs and you don't just talk about British music, but because that's sort of your wheelhouse, it was a nice place to go to understand all these things. And very quickly before we go on, we want to thank JBL and AKG for providing us with the media center. We are at NAMM 2022, and
it's great, isn't it?
Here. Yeah,
it's been a brilliant time.
It has been a brilliant time.
Well, you'll notice in the in that series of videos, I have two quite distinct things. I talk a lot about African American music.
Yeah,
because growing up in Britain, there's two types of music we love, and that's British music. We grew up listening to Beatles and the Stones and Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and the Kinks and the Who and Queen and all that stuff, and then so we love all those bands, but then we love Black American music.
Yes.
We love R&B and soul and blues and funk and disco and jazz. And so, Mike Bloomfield's famous quote in like the late 60s, he said, the British took American music and sold it back to the Americans.
Yeah. Why is it you think that there's a British sensibility that is advanced to even what Americans appreciate about American music? What?
Well, I think actually, in its defense, because I've lived in America for a while now, is it's geographically massive.
Ah, yeah.
So geography does play a lot of. So it's particularly before the internet, you could be living in Florida, for instance, and only know bands like Lynyrd Skynyrd and stuff like that. Yeah. I remember when I first moved here, I started touring in the late 90s, and that was like we had the internet, but it wasn't what it is now. And I remember opening for some punk bands and like playing with them in Southern California, and every show was packed. And then going to New York, and there was like 8 people there at the Bowery Ballroom.
Wow.
And I'm like, what's going on? Well, like, we're just not big in New York. I mean, that's not possible anymore. Now we have the lovely internet. You know, if you're big, you're big. If you're not big, you're not big. It's, you know, people can hear you from all over the world. You have so much more access. But in those days, you could get played on regional radio in one state and not even exist in another state, or nobody could have heard of you. So America does have geography as a plus, as a bonus, but also in that aspect as a negative. Plus multiple. This has been made not just by me. Charlie Gillett made this point in his book, The Sound of the City. One of the great things about Britain is it has one time zone. So you have BBC Radio 1 has to have the whole country, has to keep everybody happy. So you wake up in the morning and it's playing music to somebody in Inverness and somebody, you know, in Land's End in Cornwall, 2 opposite ends of the country, all are getting the same music. Yeah. Where, you know, you've got all these multiple time zones. You know, you're not beaming to a national audience, you're beaming to regional audiences, you know, so that does play a lot into it. It's a lot easier. I know I did a marketing course a couple of decades ago, and a lot of Japanese companies in those days, when they were bringing out a new piece of technology, they would launch it in Britain first, just as a tester, because they could do a national advertising TV campaign and find out if it was going to work without spending the multiple millions in a country like America, where you have to have it running in multiple TV stations and multiple formats. Then they could just put it on ITV. Didn't happen. Save ourselves some money. You know, 65 million people will see it, you know, so yeah.
Yeah. Musically speaking, as a creator, as a producer, what are you excited about right now?
What do you mean, what artists?
Yeah, anything. I mean, what genres, what artists, what do you think is exciting from your point
I
of
think
view?
the most exciting thing is what can be.
Okay.
You know,
so technology-wise?
Yeah, technology-wise. I just did a panel, the AES panel upstairs, and it was insane. We had 220 people in that little room.
Wow.
Standing room only, people outside the door. So the biggest one they've ever had, which is insane. It was really, really good. And our whole topic, I had Ken Calais on the panel, who produced Rumors.
Yeah.
So I had Ken Calais, and then I had Mark Daniel Nelson, who's obviously on our show a lot.
Yeah.
And then Christian Kohler, who's a German metal producer, who lives in Germany. And then Eric Boulanger, who's just probably inarguably the best mastering engineer at the moment.
Yeah.
So I had this panel, and
what a panel.
And the thing is everybody had the same common link. There's a lot of us and them at the moment, which I'm exhausted of. This kind of like, music used to be amazing in the 70s, and you kids don't know what you're doing. There's so many wagging finger things. It's exhausting. The reality is, you hear Ken talk, and he's like, yeah, I love EQ. I used to put 12 dB boosts on things to make it sound good. I mean, things that everybody go, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. I mean, how many times have you gone to forums where you're being told that, oh, back in the 70s, everybody was a genius musician and they just threw a mic up and magic happened. And then you meet Ken. I mean, good friends with Jack Douglas and Jay Messina and Shelly Yakos, the guys that made all the records that we consider the greatest records of all time.
Yeah.
And they're like, we cut up tape. We had to like Jack was telling me how they did live at the Budokan. He said, firstly, it wasn't the Budokan. It was Osaka, because the recordings from the Budokan were unusable. With today's technology, they could do it. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it wasn't even the Budokan, it was Osaka. And they took the Osaka tapes, and I think they had, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 mics on the drums. And he's like, I couldn't get any bottom snare. I couldn't get any personality. So he put a speaker under the snare. And because everything was so bleeding into each other, he had to EQ it to just go kind of like this, make this sort of mid-range sound. Speaker under the snare, mic the bottom snare. All kinds. Actually, sorry, I want to talk about, he flipped the snare so that the snare's on the top, the rat on the top, mic that with the speaker underneath, hitting this.
Wow.
I mean, nowadays, so they used to do all kinds of crazy things to get great records.
Yeah. Sure.
So this idea that everybody used to be a genius and you kids don't know what you're doing is just, it's exhausting to listen to. And so my thing is like, how can we bring people together, you know, so that the younger guys and girls coming up can find these people that made the records we all admire and realize it's just the same as them. They're just making it up as they went, having some fun. So for me, excuse me, I'm most excited because the technology is making it so that anybody can do this. We just need to get in there and encourage the creativity.
Yeah.
Let's just get in there and empower people. There's a lot of people here making a living from selling equipment. Well, you know what we should do? We should be getting those young people to come in and tell them about what they can do,
Absolutely.
so that we've got a growth of young people that want to take over rather than sort of, just holding this kind of top echelon of genius up and telling everybody that you don't know. They're all geniuses and you don't know what you're doing. No, I don't believe that at all. I feel like the access is great now. The technology is great.
Yeah.
If somebody just really loves music, they can find out how to really master their instruments now.
Yeah.
There's so much access that you can go on to Spotify and go, oh, I heard about John Coltrane. Who's John Coltrane? Boom. Oh, wow, he played with Miles Davis. Who's Miles Davis? So before you know it, you've
gone down the magical rabbit hole.
the wonderful rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Ken Calais?
No.
He is for our viewers. Ken Calais is Colby Calais' dad.
Oh, okay.
That's what he is now.
Okay.
But before that, he made a zillion records that we know and love.
One of them's called Rumors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So,
Like the third biggest selling album of
Come
all time. or
on.
something like that.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and just, guys who experimented and pushed the limits of things and didn't pay any attention to what was supposed to be good. And nowadays, there is a lot of, we walk around the NAMM show. We're at the NAMM show 2022. And there's a lot of traffic in pro audio and DJ systems.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of guys who are, grumbling about that because when we are at guitar booths or drum booths, the crowd's a little thinner and a little older. But the reality is that there's a different kind of access to creativity. Now it's in a different place. So we need to, first of all, embrace that and then let that bleed into kids getting involved in playing together. And
I just feel like when you learn any new skill, you always tend to go too far in the wrong direction before you go back to the right direction. I just saw Paul Davids and he asked me, what's the worst piece of advice you've ever got? And I was like, it's my own advice I gave to myself, where I used to learn ideas from records. And then I got really into the technical. So I'd spend hours shredding and learning stuff. And I realized I wasn't developing my ear or my creativity. I spent too long in the technical, where all of the people I admire, a lot of them may have only known a blues scale, if even that. When I listen to Jeff Beck play, he's playing a pentatonic minor blues scale and twisting it to wherever he wants it to go.
Yep.
Pretty much all the time.
Yeah. I do not listen to Jeff Beck and go, oh, yeah, I love the way he went on the Aeolian and then came back on the Lydian.
Yeah.
And then do you notice the way the Mixolydian over the blah, 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 and then the flat five. And then no, you hear music.
We'll
you hear music.
We love you, Rick.
We hear that. It's all about the music. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can explain that stuff away, but 99.9% of the time, the people that wrote it didn't think that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's
Great
the one
point.
thing, the piece of advice that I sort of wish I had, and nobody told it to me, but I wish and I'd like to sort of tell people is just don't worry about that stuff. That will come when you want to know. Well, why did that happen? And you seek it out when you question it yourself. But what I made the mistake of doing is I spent too many years thinking that was going to make me better when really I should have gone more with the creativity. Of course, it comes full circle. So the reason why I bring it up is it's also part of the development. It's also okay to do something wrong for a few years.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad to hear that advice because I've done that a few times.
I think we all have.
Sure.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the not so wonderful rabbit hole on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can get down and they'll be like, look at all this that I don't know, that I'm not doing. Why am I thinking this way? Yeah, it's a good thing to let go of.
Yeah. And it depends on the personality type. Now, for me, I'm completely obsessional. So I work 12 to 15 hours a day. So when I've got my laptop open, I'm answering questions, we're filming some stuff, I'm mixing a song, all of which the whole time I've got a guitar on my lap and I'm practicing. That to me is when I'm happy. That's my happiest. If you said to me, oh, you could have a week off on your own, yeah, I'd go and sit on a beach and play guitar.
With your guitar.
Yeah,
all
with
right.
Well, so
Yes.
what about that? What is it to you? So you've produced your repertoire is ridiculous. It's over here and it's all the way over here.
Yeah.
But what
Right.
is it for
How
you?
about
You
Mark
sit down.
Broussard? Corn.
and corn. and what you produce music on Grey's Anatomy and right. I mean, it's everywhere. But music to you, when you sit down with a guitar and you were talking about shredding, you sit with acoustic and relax. What's your kind of music?
I'm all over the place.
Yeah,
I am. That's what, when we do those album series stuff, that is all the music I love. So my father was a painter and a sculptor who was obsessed with classical music and jazz. And the great thing about growing up in a household that just had classical music and jazz playing when you're little is it's the highest level stuff. So your ear gets really tuned into big melody, especially in classical music, huge melodies, And then I discovered through my father Queen, because he bought me A Night at the Opera when I was 7.
there you go.
And gave it to me and said,
Nice
this
job, Dad.
this is worthy. This is worthy. He didn't say much. When he did say something, it was important. And so suddenly I'm allowed to listen to some crazy rock that also had to be like operatic and intense. But then, like every kid, I rebelled, and so I got into like punk. But all the time I had jazz and blues and classical music in my back pocket that I'd grown up with. And so for me, when I'm asked that question, it's a tough one, because I like Joy Division. I've got 2 Peter Hook basses. I've got the 6-string Shergold he uses, his signature series, and I've got the signature Yamaha 4-string that he played as well in Joy Division and New Order. So to me, but I also think Jaco Pastorius is the greatest bass player ever lived. At the same time as Peter Hook is one of the other greatest bass, and yet they're completely different animals.
Yeah.
And a Jaco guy would not think that
Peter Hook
was great.
Yeah.
But we all know that, da 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 da. We'd all chop off our left finger to write that song.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what I love, is that sort of understanding. Yeah, I can listen to Come On, Come Over and think it's some of the best bass playing ever, which it is. But I can also listen to Love Will Tear Us Apart and think that is one of the best songs ever written. And what a melody. I wish I'd written that bass line.
Yeah. I actually wasn't really all that into Joy Division until I saw that.
Yeah.
I also want to plug Produce Like a Pro, because we are at the NAMM show. Tonight is the Tech Awards. And for anybody who doesn't know, the show won a 2019 Tech Award for music education.
Yeah. That was pretty amazing, because I didn't know. And then on the day of the Tech Awards, Mike Vanderlot, shout out to Matt Vanderlot, who's a freaking institution at NAMM, texts me and says, I got you tickets for the Tech Awards. I was like, why? He's like, you really need to go. You should go. And I was like, okay. And then we go, and they literally put the table near the front of the stage, like as we're arriving, like, they had to add a table. And I'm like, still didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And what I loved is like, it was Al Schmidt's book. It was like Mix of the Masters, all the things, and us. And I didn't think anything of it. And then they said, blah, blah, blah. All of us thought Al was going to win, because it's Al, and he's a genius. And
right.
I'm just me. And then when we won, it was incredible. And I got off the stage, and the first person I saw was Steve Jenowick, who's, Al's right-hand man.
Yeah.
And he goes, I just called Al. And Al said that he wasn't well. He goes, did we win? And he's like, no, we didn't win. And he's like, whatever. And he goes, who's won? And he goes, Warren won. He goes, I like that guy. And I remember thinking that's like the best compliment I've ever had in that context. He wrote this book. I win it, and he's complimentary to me. It was like, it doesn't get any better,
Al Schmidt
was
an engineer who made records for everybody from Frank Sinatra to Barry Manilow. I mean, he's the old master. He's like the Yoda of sound engineers.
I don't remember the exact number, but I think it's 27 or 28 Grammys.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Wow.
He once told us his piece of advice. Just if you could give us one piece of advice, Al, what is it? He said, on the VU meter, there's that red part. Yeah. Don't go up there.
Don't what?
Don't go up there.
Don't go up there. That's great.
If you asked me, I'd be like, don't worry about it. Does it sound good? Who cares?
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
I can still think that Al is one of the greatest engineers that ever lived.
And if he heard you say what you said, he'd be like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. All that matters is the results. If it sounds great, it sounds great. If you got there on a laptop, or you got there on 2 sync 24 track, 2-inch machines, I don't care.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how you got there. What matters is what comes out of the speakers.
I want to go way inside baseball for me because I am a funk drummer. I identify as a funk drummer. So I think in 16s. And the thing about playing in a British rock band is there are a lot of British arrangements where what I would feel to be the true one, that's not one. Let's put one right here. Let's play this for 4 measures and then jump into the next part, or play this phrase for 3 measures and jump out of it. And that, for me, takes getting used to. Do you think there's any validity to that comment? You think British music is less concerned with thinking in 16s?
Yeah, probably less concerned in 16s. I do think that we, if you ask about rhythm sections, it would always be whatever funk, R&B, soul rhythm section we're trying to be like. That was really where it comes from. As big as the Eagles are, one of the biggest bands of all time, they sold a fraction of a percentage of records in England. That wasn't really our music in the 70s. It didn't make sense to us. It's not that it wasn't great. It's just like, when you're in the 70s, especially in Europe at the time, because there was this like long, slow kind of fallout from the Second World War. There's a lot of austerity in the 70s with loads and loads of strikes and stuff going on. So where you had like American music was like, happy, go lucky, down at the beach, everything was fantastic. We had punk rock and new wave permeating in Britain and Europe because of so much, dissatisfaction. And I think there was a lot of, how can we mess this up? How can we do things that are different? So a lot of it was probably just deliberate to be different, to try and break away from the norm, and which I love, because that's what music is about. It's about invention and creativity. Back to that word, creativity.
No kidding. That's going to help me like that more.
Yeah, a little bit.
Getting started in that, there were things.
What songs? Give me a song that you did.
Oh man, I'll think of something. There's actually a song that I don't remember because it fell off of our set list and we replaced it with something better. But it'll come to me, and when it does, I'll ping you about it if I don't bring it up here. But mostly it's just our guitar player, because when he's done soloing, he just looks over his shoulder and it's time for me to bring him back. And sometimes I go, man, we had 3 more measures to play in that, but he wants to come back right now. And that's not something that he doesn't care anything about that. He's like, hey, butts are shaking. Let's keep going. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And hey, I've committed to following him.
Right.
So it's been a great music education and something that I didn't anticipate I would learn. And so it's been fun. So how long have you lived here in the States?
I've been here
90s, you said, mid-90s?
Yeah, a long time. But up until obviously the pandemic, I would travel a lot. Like in 2019, we did like 13 international trips. So, in that year, I may have gone to England 3 times, Ireland once, Germany twice. We were in Vienna that year. We were in Rome. We were in France twice. Poland. My wife's Polish. We went to Poland, and we went to Music China.
Wow.
So typically, I stay. People. I've been here a long time. I stay relatively English because I think I probably, most of my time in America, but I still go back to England and I still
refresh it.
Yeah. I really, my mother's side of the family is Irish and Dutch grandmother, Irish grandfather. And so I feel very sort of European and worldly.
All
and
over the place.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
I like being a bit of a mutt. Obviously, Brexit was really annoying. Doesn't make any sense. To a guy like me, we're at family in Greece and Holland, Netherlands and Ireland and England. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was nice to have it all tied together.
It was nice at one stage, yeah. But whatever, it is what it is.
Music education in the States is something that we always debate. How do we solve these problems? Do you have any ideas for solving music education?
I'm trying to do as much as I can about it. So I'm the head of marketing for the Goffin and King Foundation, which is obviously Carol and Jerry Goffin. Through my friend Louise Goffin. Hi, Louise, who I've known since we think 89 or 90. She came to a studio I was working at when I was super young. It was her and Girl Ann Dorsey was the bass player, Bowie's bass player, and I was a kid. And she came with Andy Jackson, who's Pink Floyd's producer, and I'm like in my studio, like super nervous. She came in. I think she had the Stacey brothers playing with her, which is insane session players. and we've been friends ever since. And the school that my kids, or they're now in different schools, but the school my kids were in was a very nice LA school, a private school. And there was a music teacher there, Caitlin. Hey, Caitlin Carlos. And she runs a program where she puts music teachers into paid schools that can afford, because obviously most public schools don't have music teachers in there. So we said to her, what about if we could raise money to pay your teachers to go into not only public schools, but public schools that the parents aren't even wealthy enough to pay even the basic salary. So we've just found our first school. It's in a really random area of like downtown LA, between LA County and LA City. And they have no funding whatsoever from either area. Up until 2 years ago, all of the teachers there were only substitute. Now they have 85% actual teachers up there.
Wow.
And it's just amazing what you can do if you know. What we did is what Caitlin did is she found a student that was going to, I believe, USC, that she was teaching, who came from that area. So now she's gone back in there.
Good.
Because you don't want, Warren that they will not identify with going in there and teaching music. We found somebody from the area that can speak to those kids. So it's a big deal for me. Look, like I said earlier, growing up in Britain, two types of music. We love British music and we love African-American black music. So you go to those kinds of schools and you're like, this is a predominantly poor black neighborhood where 40% of the kids are in foster care. And there's more likelihood of creativity coming out from those kids than pretty much anywhere else. Yeah. And now we can help them, trying to give back as much as you can.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it's a big deal.
Great.
We're just starting that. We just actually today got the website, the first draft of it. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll launch a website. We've got a couple of people. Oh, Louise is going to hate me. I can't say who the first two people that are sort of ambassadors for us, but let's just say the first ambassador is Knighted.
Okay.
Nice.
And he's currently on tour.
Okay.
All right.
And he's one of the two most successful songwriters of all time.
We're narrowing it down.
Yes,
yeah.
We've
A little
narrowed
bit.
it down.
Yeah.
Our guest today has been Warren Huart. Tremendous honor for me to have you on the show.
Absolutely.
I love your work. I'm going to continue to love your work, and I love your
Thank you
message
ever
even
so
more
much.
now. I'm in for whatever it is. So whatever vehicle you're doing, especially music education, please include us.
Let's exchange. Lee over there is the DOO, the Director of Operations.
All right.
He's the guy who keeps it all going. So maybe we can exchange information and talk about it.
Great.
Terrific.
Yeah.
We're at NAMM
Oh, love it.
2022.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you.